Good evening, and welcome to MOTS presents MOTS Ado About Nothing.
MOTS Ado About Nothing. MOTS Ado About Nothing.
Where we apply the revolutionary MOTS scale to classic and contemporary literature.
MOTS Ado About Nothing. MOTS Ado About Nothing.
This podcast contains mature content, spoilers, language. You have been warned. Hello, and welcome to MOTS Ado About Nothing. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Scott Tholo.
Hello.
Stephen Ramosi.
Howdy.
Veronica Hernandez.
Hello there.
And Katie Kelly.
How you doing?
Today we are doing, I apologize for butchering this in advance, Haruki Murakami's The Second Bakery Attack. So, does anyone wish to give the funny logline, Scott?
Yes, otherwise known as Pope Bakery.
Steve-O, you want to give a summation of the story?
Sure. This is a story about a husband and wife who, after a husband briefly admits to attempting to rob a bakery, his wife convinces him that he has to actually go through with robbing a bakery, and their hilarious, side quests that come from that.
Wait, you consider armed robbery to be hilarious?
Yes.
All right.
Almost all the time.
Kind of. But I have one more. Natural Born Bakery. I'll go with that. You made me think of that.
Good. So, Katie, would we like to start with the introduction?
The introduction. Basically, a man and a wife are sleeping, and he wakes up with a terrible pang of hunger, and she also wakes up with a terrible pang of hunger, and he briefly tries to defend himself to the reader by saying that they've been married 2 months, I believe.
Very recently, yeah.
Very recently. And they are too busy to actually go to a grocery store and buy anything to have in their fridge. So all they have in their fridge is 2 almost rotten onions.
Yeah.
Butter.
I like random shit. Beer.
6 cans of beer.
Beer.
6 cans of beer.
Refrigerator deodorant, as they put it. And they contemplated sauteing the French dressing and refrigerator deodorant until he started drinking, and he basically admitted to his wife that him and his friend were poor and refused to work when they were young kids, and they decided to rob a bakery to get some food. And they got caught, and instead of, just giving him the bread, the owner decided that they had to listen to very boring opera music. Or classical music.
Boring?
It's pronounced Wagner.
Wagner.
Sure. Boring to them, though, at least.
So, as described by the narrator, boring. And it's not a personal opinion in any way. But basically, the introduction, I believe, ends when he kind of admitted to his wife that they robbed a bakery, and she started questioning him.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that's pretty fair.
Well, yes, it's close, I think. I think the introduction starts or cuts off when she decides that they have to rob another bakery, which is like, I know it's like a splitting hairs thing, kind of, but after he describes the story, she decides also, if you guys remember, that that's a curse on him, so he has to undo the curse in some way.
That's
it's
just
sort of like
excuses to go out and rob a
yeah,
bakery.
it's like Act 1, Act 2. But I think more or less it's roughly there, and I agree that, or at least I would say that's an intriguing setup. I liked it a lot, and just as a background, I like Murakami himself a lot. I read a couple of his other novels, so I sort of am biased, but I think it's rightly so, because his stories often have a great setup such as this.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. The whole setup here is very... I mean, the whole story is very, like, Murakami-esque.
Yes.
Without having the longer form... Because I've only read one of his novels. But I read Kafka on the Shore, and I really liked it because it kind of had the same feel that this short story has of this kind of almost dreamlike sense to it.
Fuck you. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the word I had written down.
Yeah.
He does set up the introduction with a metaphor as a volcano underwater
Yes.
forming underneath him, which is kind of used throughout the story
Mhm.
as metaphor for, I think, kind of the pink elephant in the room. Something that is kind of there. Like his past obviously is not really discussed with his wife, and he offhandedly mentioned something that he did in his youth. And
But also, there's an implication that although they're married, there's not a great dialogue between them.
But they don't really know too much
Yeah.
about each other, I guess.
It's like they
Yeah.
hastily jumped into the marriage in some way. But I definitely agree with the dreamlike as a term. And I also had surreal, sort of, I know I'll overuse this, but I'm going to use it here, Lynchian kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's like, Murakami is like known for that, at least from what I've also read. And it's all, I again have a affinity for that kind of style. And he uses it very well in his shorter works and in longer works as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving it a 1.
I would like to read the opening segment of this just to
Give an
demonstrate
example.
the style. I'm still not sure I made the right choice when I told my wife about the bakery attack. But then it might not have been a question of right and wrong, which is to say that wrong choices can produce right results, and vice versa. I myself have adopted the position that, in fact, we never choose anything at all. Things happen or not. And throughout through the story, that last part, whether it kind of causality to
Yes, I know. You're gonna bring in determinism, sure.
Kind of is a theme that keeps popping up throughout this story.
Sure.
Mhm.
But regardless, I really like the opening. I thought it was, again, very dreamlike, very, not quite absurdist, I would say.
Surreal is
But
what the
it's
best way I
definitely
can say.
surrealist, and I'm going to give it a 1 for that.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a 1 too, just because it definitely caught my attention from the very beginning. And I will say that going in, I wasn't really sure where it was going to end up. And I kind of like that because sometimes stories...
It's almost like a mystery. Kind of.
It sets you up, what will happen next. And there were certain lines and, I guess, dialogue, which we'll go into detail later on. But his explanation for just going along with it is kind of explained at the very introduction. Just saying, I just assumed or just went with it.
That's how
just
he is.
because they had just been married and that was just what it was. And so it gave me kind of a starting point for him, the husband's character, as we kind of went into the story later on.
I just said before that the lack of absurdity, but there is the title, The Second Bakery Attack, has a level of absurdity to it that just draws you, intrigues you. You're like, what the heck is a bakery attack? And more
Why
so,
would there
what
be
is
two
the
of them?
second? Yeah, why is
Sure.
two of them? So I don't know. I think, and it opening up with saying, like, I don't know why I told about the bakery attack. You're initially drawn and wanting to know
No,
more.
it's like I said, it's a mystery setup at the outset with a weird sense of like maybe magic or realism. It's something Verno and I like to discuss about. It has tinges of that as well.
Yeah.
Light, but yes, I can see where you're getting that.
But sure, all that to say, it was an intriguing setup.
1's all around in the intro?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Veronica, onto you for the body.
So, for the body of the story, it kind of goes into detail of, I believe we agreed that once he tells her about the first
Once he relays his story, yeah.
bakery attack and what exactly happened, which wasn't a bakery attack at all. It was really a
bakery
transaction.
exchange, if you will.
Yeah, it was an exchange as it was described. But it kind of goes into her, again, convincing him of being cursed the first time around and that she was then dragged into it, kind of trying to build on this reasonable, and I do that with quotes, this reasonable explanation as to why they need to do it again. And
Which wasn't really a bakery attack either.
Yeah,
right.
It's just a justification, really, but sure.
Exactly. But I can definitely say that this author, I've heard a lot about him, and what I do like is that the dreamlike state does carry through the entire body
It's
of the
ever
story.
present, yeah.
And, speaking with Katie about this earlier, she mentioned how she wasn't sure who was really there, who it wasn't, and that, again, that dreamlike state is carrying through the entire story. in their conversations with one another. The dialogue is phenomenal, but you're really not sure what's going to happen next. So we're still carrying over from the introduction of, okay, so we're going to go rob someone. This is our explanation for it.
Yes.
And, they're driving down, all these cities trying to find it and avoiding the cops, even though they're just driving around.
There's no reason to do that.
But there's a gun, and the wife has a
shotgun,
gun,
yeah.
and he's hearing the shells kind of like, clinking against each other in her coat pocket. And that the imagery was phenomenal for me, too, even in that dreamlike state. So I'm going to give it a 1, just because I think that it really described not only the second holdup, quote unquote, but the interactions with the people that they came, in contact with at the McDonald's that they end up holding up, and
because they can't find an open
next
bakery.
best
right,
to a
they
bakery.
can't
Yeah.
find a bakery, and so I guess she rather comes to the
justifies
conclusion,
robbing a-
right?
So where
Mickey
do
D's.
you think the body ends?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I
It may affect what you're going to say, sure.
Sure.
I don't know if perhaps the body ends when they go into the McDonald's. That's kind
For-
of what I was thinking.
No, for me, I would probably say when they pulled into, after they hold up the McDonald's and they get like 40, and this isn't the exact number.
You got a
but
whole
it's
bunch of
30.
Big Macs, yeah.
30?
Yes.
30 Big Macs
Mhm.
or hamburgers. They weren't really
No, they're
specific
big-
on
no,
it. I
they're
hope
Big
it
Macs.
will.
They're specifically Big Macs, yes.
Oh, awesome, first of all. Second, I would probably say that the body ends right before they leave, after they've stolen all of the Big Macs, and they pull into the parking lot to eat
Eat
them.
them all.
And then they clearly can't eat all of them. I hope.
He eats
6 and
6 and
4.
she eats 4.
Yeah, thank goodness, because that's bad. That would probably
That's still
be
a lot.
Yeah, it is. But I would say that that's the end, because, the whole story, it's building up to their actual action of holding up the McDonald's or a bakery or something. And then, the process of walking away from it and, reaping the reward of their hold up. And I think that would be the end of the body.
I agree. It builds up to the
I was
action.
gonna agree with you. That would be my suggestion too.
It builds up to the action, and you sort of have to cut it off there. Again, we've encountered this issue, if not problem, in other episodes when we've done a shorter-ish story, because it's not a lot of time to pace it all out. The ending is somewhat abrupt, but I think that's where it does cut off, by necessity of the story, the framework of it.
I think that Murakami does a really good job in the body of kind of maintaining or upping the ante of the idea of the surrealism that's going on, throughout, and it just kind of gets more and more ridiculous as he, as they're, well, the initial part where he's like, well, I tried to rob this place and, things were never the same. And she's like, well, you're cursed. Let's grab my shotgun and my ski masks and go out and rob another place.
It's bizarre.
Which you never knew she had.
Didn't
Right.
ski.
Someone, I
lynching.
think you brought up lynching, yeah. The idea of he's married to someone and has no idea about anything about her. In that, she has ski masks, a shotgun shells,
And a plan.
Yeah,
She
a
blacks
plan
out the
to go
license
and-
plate and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
willing
Hulu
to
is
go
so
and
well prepared for
rob
that.
a McDonald's or
And when
whatever.
she comments on that, within while it's happening in the story, sure.
and it's such a fascinating the discussion of the really two married people. Yeah, they've been married for 2 weeks or so, but how someone you're married to is also so distant from you.
Yeah,
And that it might take a bakery attack to really bring you together.
Sure.
Sure, I guess.
Have
Well,
you ever
It
tried a
might
bakery
take
attack?
armed robbery to bring you together
Yeah.
is a better.
exactly.
Could be a message there which will speak in themes. But no, I agree. Regardless, again, the quality of it will speak to style, but it flows in and throughout the whole body and into the even into the conclusion as well, and it sustains itself quite well. Murakami is again, like I said, I know him and like him a lot, so I'm going to be biased, but I think again, if you look at the way he uses it, it's brilliantly put together.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 1 for the Bonnie and Clyde feel.
Yeah, that's a good time.
I'm
surprised no one's brought that up earlier, but
yeah, I'm gonna give the body a 1 as well. Like that's it is that kind of just buddy robbery type of feel.
I'm gonna give it a 1 for the McDonald's advertisement.
I'm gonna give it a 1 because I can't believe they ate that many, Big Macs. But
you don't have to believe it because it's just a story,
No, this really happened.
They were really hungry.
They were
based on a true
starving.
story.
And there's a hunger
based
that
on
comes
actual
after
Japanese
robbery.
history.
Based on actual Japanese history. Giant enemy crab.
But regardless,
all right.
it's one.
So one's all around. I believe I'm up for the conclusion.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
So at the end, we've already talked about this, but so Veronica, where did you leave off with the body? After they leave the McDonald's?
They're like
Yeah.
eating them.
I was saying when they're sitting
They
in the parking
go,
lot.
so they go to the parking lot, they eat them, and then she falls asleep on his shoulder, and they are both satisfied with all that they have brought.
Yeah, and he drifts back
And
into his
right
boat
when she
metaphor.
falls
Right,
asleep.
and it goes back into the metaphor, and that's it.
Yes.
The end.
I stretch out in the bottom of the boat and close my eyes, waiting for the rising tide to carry me where I belong.
So I felt like I enjoyed the boat metaphor, but it seemed a little stretched at points to me, and was probably the least enjoyable part of this story.
Yeah, I agree.
It wasn't.
I don't know if I do. Go on.
It seemed kind of out of place as far as everything else in this story went.
It's a lot more descriptive, I think, than the rest of the...
Yeah, and it's...
But that's all the point. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. It just seemed like it didn't necessarily belong in the story as much as the whole rest of the story was this surrealism that was grounded in reality, and this was just
Pure dream. Sure.
yeah,
I
like,
get it.
just had nothing to do with anything that had to do with reality.
It's not that I disagree with that. It's just that it was set up early on, right?
And-
it's introduced early in the introduction as a metaphor, as like his state of mind, essentially.
and I could see it as a fleeting metaphor,
And
but
then
it
it
seemed
comes
kind
back.
of stretched.
And I felt it was jarring every time.
Yeah,
It
Not to
broke
me.
me out of the flow of the rest of the narrative every time they brought up the the volcano under the water and all that. So I'm leaning towards your opinion on that, though. I think that was more appropriate for themes.
that's
than
probably
conclusion.
themes as well. But as far as the conclusion went, there wasn't much to it. If we're taking it
well, it was
from
that.
where we said it was kind of just eating and falling asleep. And while that's the obvious conclusion of this, I don't know if it was strong. I think if
Was it effective though? Is the question, of course, always.
effective at what? Being the end of the story?
Yes.
I think it could
You're
have
saying
ended.
it- you're
I think
saying
it could
that
have
point,
ended
but-
without that, and it would have been just as effective.
I know,
I
I get it.
don't know if it did anything for me as far as the story went.
I have to agree. The conclusion was very weak, and I am sorry, I'm forgetting who mentioned that it was almost like a break in the rhythm of the story. Ian, it's definitely something that it could have ended right when she fell asleep. And okay, we know that he's clearly following his wife blindly at this point, but the metaphor I think fails. I can see what he was trying to do, but I think it fails. It doesn't fit with the rest of the flow of the story. At the very beginning, he mentions it, but or does he?
He
Yes.
does. It's
He
brought
introduces
up a
it
couple
early.
of times throughout.
Yes, I think it's 3, maybe 4.
Yeah, through it's
Something like that. But see, so I guess what I want to say is I see both of your points completely. It's just that I think it does work, I guess. I don't think it's as jarring as it was to you upon reading. But again, perhaps that's my bias showing through because of that. I know it, like the nature of Murakami's style, and it connects to my love of Lynch, and etc. All that. If I saw it like in another story, I might agree with you. But in this case, I think it works for me.
Can you explain to me just briefly and just to support, your opinion there? Why do you think it works? What do you think it adds to the story, or what, summarizes the whole journey of the second bakery attack?
I think it's because you said the magical realism, surrealism thing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's an image for how he feels, essentially, right? It's not like he's dreaming this or whatever. That's how the hunger essentially kind of makes him feel, or like his general viewpoint to his situation at this point.
But isn't that a cheap escape at
it could
what
be,
you had built upon in the story?
It could be in another story, but just not in this one.
The metaphor of his hunger being gone after the robbery accomplishes everything that the ocean metaphor
it's like
did.
double.
So it's double metaphor and unnecessary. It's a redundant metaphor.
Yeah, but I think it's... You see, I take the opposite end of the coin. I see that, again, that argument for sure. But when it becomes meta, if you will, I like that kind of stuff. And I think, again, it works in this case for me. That's the only case I can give to you guys. You know, it's a difference of opinion, of course, of preference.
Absolutely.
It could have very well lived or died in another story, is all.
I think kind of tying along with the premise that the marriage has a lot of things to be left unsaid, or there are things about themselves that they don't know about each other. It's kind of like, I feel like this also could be a theme, but a commentary on addiction. So you get that high, you have that coming up, and then you come down and you crash. You know, I think that's a statement in itself, and why the conclusion is so short. And I agree that it's jarring, but I think it's kind of fitting to the story.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't think about that angle, but the last sentence you just said,
like he fulfilled, like he felt like he fulfilled a need. He wasn't hungry anymore after he did the robbery. So obviously, both of them. Obviously, she was a closet freak. You know, had all this stuff. Obviously, she was ready and raring to go. And
that's a born bakery.
You know, they did it, and it's like, oh well, good night. Like everything's right with the world.
Thank you. All I can say is,
and a good time was had by all.
Yeah, it was more fitting to me. It wasn't as jarring, so I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I like the story, but the conclusion fell a little bit short for me. And honestly, when I was thinking about it originally, the conclusion was quite a bit longer than what we're talking about. And if that was the case, I might have given it a 1. But since we're talking about in terms of this, it's just the very last scene. I don't think it was as
not a strong finish.
Effective as it could have been.
I think Katie's point, because I like themes, I think that's a very interesting point. I think she turned me to a 1, so I'm going to go with that.
Okay. Veronica?
I'm still going to give it a 0. I think that it actually hurt the story and the character, specifically the husband, if anything else. I don't think that it really... And I can see where Katie's getting, you know, what she thinks the conclusion was kind of displaying, possibly an addiction, and it kind of easing off. But I don't think that it really... I don't think it was successful. I think it hurt the character, so I'll give it a 0.
Okay. Oh, that's fair. So I could talk about themes. Speaking of themes, right? So no, I like that one. I didn't even think about it at all. The one that Katie just brought up. The one that I got out of it was the strangest of modern life, I guess. And yes, you can go into antagonist-ish things about it, but like we said, the setup is they're newlyweds. They know each other well enough, but clearly not as well as they think they know. So they decided to go on this bizarre, again, like half real, half maybe not adventure, and whatever thrill or not they're getting out of it, it speaks to like trying to connect to whoever you are with whoever you're with in modern life. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's much more recent story, right? So it's like, you know, the history you may not know, even if you're in an intimate relationship with whoever you may be in whatever relationship with. Sort of like the check out our episode on Happy Birthday. That it's like somewhat tinges of that, just not as broadly.
Yeah,
I guess. So all of those, both of those, and whatever other themes you may speak to me about shortly, I think, or at least those two were strong, and I like them. I like the way they were integrated in the story.
To build off what you just said, like I love the sins of the past, I think, but I'm a sucker for romance, and this is a wonderful romance.
It's also a true romance bakery. Like there's other things you can, but I agree with that.
But the idea is that these two people did not know about their past, whether it's an addictive past or whether it's a kind of violent, thrill-seeking past. They were drawn together without knowing
regardless,
this, then found that they shared this together and that they can go out and rob a McDonald's and enjoy some Big Macs from it. And good for them. Go get them, kids.
Good on you.
Have fun. But like that, to me, it's kind of I feel very optimistic from this after reading this story, and this kind of this bizarre nature to their relationship and the fact that they're drawn together for having this weird part of themselves.
It is a strangely optimistic story for,
given the nature of it.
This bizarre trek to go and rob a bakery in the middle of the night. It is like affirming, like it affirms their kind of appreciation for each other and that type of thing.
It ends on a somewhat romantic note versus a tragic one.
They're going to make it for a couple of years before they get arrested and
Right.
prison. So
that, or they might get arrested later that night while asleep in a freaking parking lot.
Well, we'll see.
I think I'm in agreement that has a lot to do with modern relationships and trying to find connections to people. I mean, probably this was in Tokyo, or took place in Tokyo, so I'm assuming that their marriage was arranged.
It never says either way.
No, I mean,
No, it doesn't. But I mean,
there's anything-
that too, with kind of the antisocial tendencies that dating has today with all the online stuff. Like, people have to find a connection. And, maybe I feel like with some of the things that his hesitation also in the beginning of going on this and kind of him doubting her why they should even do this. And then right at the end, he says, still, was it really necessary for us to do all of this? And she says, of course it was.
Obviously, yeah.
So
I
I feel
really
like
that line.
that she probably had some issues that she didn't fully disclose to him before they got married, and he's kind of just going along because he wants to feel closer to her, And he kind of just goes along with whatever she says, because in the beginning, he's like, can't we just go to like a 24-hour diner or something? And she's like, you can't go out and have something to eat after midnight.
It's like, don't feed him after midnight or whatever. But, sure. But he was like, for some reason, I oddly was swayed by that argument from her.
But he also seems to be it's almost like a stranger type thing. Where he is.
Of course, I was waiting to speak upon that later, but I mean, you're right.
If you look at all of them, after the first bakery attack, I just kind of fell into the rhythm of life. I went to school, I got a job, I met you, got married. Kind of the monotony of the everyday existence until
mundanity of
we're going to go out and rob another bakery.
Well, I understand that, but I also think that there's a tone of absurdity in what they're doing.
Yeah, of course.
And while
that's what makes it elevates it, I think
so too.
Rather than taking it at face value is all.
Absolutely, because yes, while it does certainly, touch upon relationships, I can certainly agree with that point. I can also agree that, in relationships, there's also a point where you, like you guys said, go along with the ride just because why not? You have someone else, and you guys mentioned the reference before, two people going on an adventure and sharing that, and I can appreciate that as a theme, certainly, but it doesn't take away from the absurdity, but I think it adds to the story as a result of that.
I agree with all that.
Yeah.
One's all around?
I think it's one's all
I think
around.
it's one of the strongest ones.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
From me.
He has definitely a way about working his way through the body, and even with everything that's working against
about him.
Yes.
No, they're going to go rob a McDonald's. Like, this is not something where you'd be like, that's a great idea. It's like, what? Why? But somehow you're reading the story and you're calm as you're reading it. There is no spike in adrenaline. It's just happening.
Sure.
And
it's like
and
matter
the story,
of fact.
Yeah, the story ends with she falls asleep as soft like a kitty. Like, that's...
Yeah. It's a Shakespeare play, almost, if you think about it.
How do I
From modernity.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm on to antagonist.
Yes, you are.
I think I'm going to pass off to you, Scott.
All right. My famous one. It's my specialty, I suppose. I guess I just sort of covered it, right? Like, the strangest of people who are supposedly, ostensibly, are familiar with. Like, those closest to you. You don't know them as well as you think you do, perhaps. And again, yes, that's a very broad thing, which can be covered in many other things. But it's going to be effective because it's the nature of being human.
Hunger.
Wagner.
Is the
Wagner.
only to the nameless narrator, which I'm always a sucker
yeah,
for
he's
that
the
device.
protagonist, so.
Or hunger in general.
Yeah, I guess like biological needs.
Yeah.
I suppose then are the antagonists as well.
It's thrills.
Yeah, but that's not the antagonist.
It's
Necessarily.
the need to.
But all of these
Addiction
things
maybe could be one if you take
all of
that
these
as a
things
thing.
led to the adventure that was the entire story.
Maybe, but like,
So I don't know if
like,
I don't know if
You're
you can
right.
even count him as an antagonist.
it's a good call to try to pass it to me because you're trying to like put me in a spot, which
Well,
normally
I don't have an antagonist for this. That's
Well,
why
yeah,
I'm not sure there is an
I'm trying to work
antagonist
through
in
it.
the story.
I think, yeah, as broadly as I always want to color something like that, like an issue in humanity which will never escape throughout history. There's nothing they're not being antagonized by anything or even themselves.
The curse.
Really?
Well,
Yeah,
she believes
it's
there's a curse.
imaginary, kind of. Yeah, maybe like.
Yeah. But
I don't know,
yeah,
it's enough.
I agree.
It's
I think it's
enough for me.
It's
yeah.
an imagined antagonist.
Yeah, as much as I want to give the story credit, I think in narrative structure there isn't one.
Right.
So I think I'll have to give it a 0.
I
That's
think
my
I would
argument.
agree with that.
Unlike our previous recording of the birthday, what was Happy Birthday?
Happy Birthday.
Where, like the lack of a definite antagonist built. What's that first do? Built to was a benefit to the story. I don't know if the lack of antagonist was a benefit to this one, because
I see what you're
I
getting
don't
at.
I don't think they could, that the I was pulling that parallel to myself, but I don't think that's a 100% accurate parallel to make, and so I might have to give it a 0 for antagonist.
It's on a 1-to-1 ratio now.
Yeah, I don't know if there is an antagonist in this.
I'm gonna disagree. I think the curse, the hunger / the curse / the addiction, whatever it is the antagonist. It's the reason why it drove them out of the house. It's the reason why they woke
Your
up.
justification? That's
But
pretty
that's
good,
not,
actually.
it's not something that's working against them. It's something that's working for their adventure that they have. I think.
Well, it's the
Maybe,
reason why. It's
but-
the reason why they went.
Right, but
It's
if
what
you look
spurs
at
them on,
like
is what
an
she's
antagonist,
saying.
it's
Yeah.
something
I mean, there's other
there's something that's
options.
working in, like against the protagonist is the entire point of an antagonist.
But throughout the story, the husband pointed out that there are other options for them to pursue, and she insisted on. So it might even be the wife.
I would argue.
I would argue
the
that
wife would.
Good case for
I
that.
would argue
yeah.
the wife more than anything else, but I
It's
still
kinda
don't
like
see
the
her as an
instigator,
antagonist.
you know?
Yeah, for sure, definitely an instigator.
Yeah, it's quite good.
If this
I'm still flip-flopping.
if this story was extended to the point where they got punished for their actions, then the wife would certainly be the antagonist there. But
Because it isn't,
because
I guess.
it hasn't been extended, there's no conflict there.
I don't know.
I mean,
It's
I
only,
would
still
it's
say,
only the potential for
I'm
this
still uncertain.
conflict.
I would say that it is the wife because he gives her another option, a sane, rational option
A more reasonable one. at
on
least, I
what to
suppose, yeah.
do because they're both super hungry, and she gives this, statement that you can't go to eat past midnight, which if you're hungry, if you're that hungry, just go and eat.
The hunger isn't the physical need to eat something. The hunger is whatever is the what?
No, I understand where you're going with it,
Feeling the
It's
hunger.
like-
but
Oh, no,
remember,
I didn't mean to-
remember though that at this point he hadn't expressed the first bakery attack. So this was something where she was trying to rationalize as, okay, we're both hungry, but let's just have a couple beers. We'll share the soggy crackers that we found in the back of the cupboard, whatever, what have you. But she is the one that as soon as she hears the story, she's like, oh, well, we must go do this. And while she's not maybe working in a negative way towards him, I mean, intentionally, I should say, she's still someone that's egging him on, even though there's a completely other option that they could go down. She's choosing this.
But that sates the hunger that both of them had by robbing the place, whether it was a bakery or McDonald's or whatever. The thing is, I think that she might be the antagonist because I doubt that it's going to stop with this one.
I'll agree with
second
you.
bakery attack.
Sure.
That may be true. It doesn't matter though because it's not contained in the story. So I'm still trying to parse it out. I like your argument there that possibly But if we're viewing this as sort of Bonnie and Clyde thing, then they should both be protagonists. Therefore, she can't quite qualify as the antagonist.
When he's a submissive, while she's...
I mean, it depends. Like I said, it's like a coin flip, really. You can get both.
I could see both sides
perfectly.
Right.
I'm still trying to parse it through myself.
The only reason why I said Bonnie and Clyde to begin with was because I thought that, they're partners in crime going around, small timing out of pure joy. But they were still well respected by the community. People didn't want them to get caught. So the fact that she's the instigator and he's constantly doubting her and, trying to put that down into her mind, and she's like, no, absolutely, we have to.
She's definitely prodding him, for sure.
Yeah,
right. She's the catalyst. That's no argument there. It's just, I don't know if that qualifies or like catapults her into antagonist territory, or if I want to retreat back to my old, if you want to be really technical about it, they're slaves to their biological and psychological needs. So, okay, no one's going to escape that. So that, you know what I mean?
I'm leaning towards the wife here, so I'm going to give it a 1
I could
wife.
almost literally coin flip it.
I'm going to give it a 0. I think there's no real protagonist or antagonist in this.
All right, here's my tiebreaker. Because I had 2 log lines that were based on like couple criminals, I'll go with 0. She's not quite the antagonist, but she could be. It's really close.
All right, ladies.
Dang, I'm still thinking about it because I want to argue for a 1, but
I wanted to argue for a 1 too, and that's why I brought up the curse/wife idea, but I think it's also too questionable to give it.
It's not.
It's a soft one. Yeah.
You gonna give it a 1?
Soft one.
All right, Veronica.
Yeah, seriously, who doesn't eat after midnight? No, I'm gonna give it a 1.
Okay, good argument.
Tiebreaker there.
The gremlins don't eat.
Yeah, I said that earlier. We used that
Oh, that's right.
Go on.
All right, it's protagonist, right? So
Yeah, Katie.
For the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
The protagonist, obviously, is the husband in this situation.
Nameless narrator.
The
I like to call him.
nameless narrator. He
Double
has, he garners sympathy from the reader. He is the halo versus the horns in the situation.
I like that.
You empathize with him too, because you kind of just want him to just do what he wants to, and you're getting fought along the whole way, but just go to the McDonald's and buy some
Just
burgers if you're hungry.
Just buy 6 Big Macs and not
I know,
steal 30 of them. or whatever.
Yeah, and then him conflicting with himself with the volcano, and now that they completed their mission, so to speak, everything's calm under the
curse
water.
Is ostensibly lifted. Like, maybe if you take that to be like, that's
Maybe
what's
he didn't even really
true.
believe that there was a curse to begin with.
Yeah.
Because
He
this
hadn't-
poor guy got
he hadn't
stuck with
considered
this
that
crazy
was-
bitch.
Crazy
lovely
wife.
woman.
lovely arranged
Well,
wife.
maybe.
But I mean, I don't know. I think he is an effective protagonist. He clearly wants to please his wife. He wants to be a good man, but he doesn't really know what a good man is. So it's kind of innocent in a way.
I like that. I like. I'm gonna draw that. Like, cut up the difference between that description and your reference to the stranger. I got the feeling, a sense of somewhat both of those. Right? He's not quite more salt, but he's somewhat adrift in life and not sure. Right? So, and yeah, because of a relationship with his new wife, he sort of is dragged along, as more salt might be, in that same situation.
Yeah.
So I certainly enjoyed him as a character. Probably give it a 1.
I think I enjoyed the style surrounding him more than I enjoyed his character. But he
They're
carried
one and
me
the same,
through.
though. That's kind of the problem, I would say. We'll talk about it.
I enjoy the writer more than I did his protagonist.
Okay.
Here.
All right.
So,
I like that
but
rephrase.
it was enough for me to again. I didn't hate the main character, and I've read the story multiple times and enjoy it. So I have to give it a 1 for that.
I think the most interesting thing about him is that he kind of turned into the person that he is in this story seemingly by accident and like had nothing to do with I guess quote unquote turning his life around. You know, he was a layabout when he was younger and just refused to work. And you know, the entire point of the first half of the story was that it's a story about him going and trying to steal food because he didn't have any because he had no money. And then as soon as this bakery owner stopped him and made him listen to Wagner, he decided, for unknown reasons, which he can't even explain, to like go and get a job and like become a productive member of society.
You not listen to Wagner?
Exactly. I was gonna, like, yes, humorously, facetiously, Wagner will change your life, my friend. Put you on the straight path.
Good point, though. He has no agency,
right,
in this entire story.
Yeah, that is a good point.
In his past, in his present, things happen to him, and he excuses them by saying, well, things, again, I mentioned causality earlier.
Yeah.
Things happen or they don't. He lives in a very black and white world, but not necessarily morally. Kind of. It's events occur or they don't.
Right.
And if they occur, that's what's supposed to be, and it'll cause events to happen after.
Even things that, like, normally people would attribute to their own choices, to him are things that just happened to him. You know, like he just things just changed and he went and got a job, you know? It's not that he decided that he wanted to be a productive member of society. He just listened to Wagner one day and then had to get a job. And that was it. And he kind of just did that. And his other friend, who he hasn't talked to since then, didn't. And that's the difference between them.
Sure, I guess. But I guess, again, I'll try to cut up both of your points to a degree. It's that he definitely is a protagonist, whether or not he chooses what is happening or, like, drives the action.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way it's written, you're going along his journey regardless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he definitely is. And I think his sort of, like, bewilderment at parts of it, and then his, like, sort of acceptance going along with it is, again, portrayed so well that he is an effective protagonist at the end of the day.
Yeah, I still like the character. I just think that, as Ian said, he has no agency whatsoever of his own.
Yeah. And
so, like, he's kind of he's not really caring anything.
You know,
anything that this character is projected upon him.
Oddly enough, he's almost like an omnipresent narrator.
Yeah,
describing the world versus actually having
partaking in it. He's removed sort of like, it's like as he watching his own actions as if he were dreaming them, and I think that's sort of the point, or at least adds to the elements of that we spoke about earlier.
Right. I have to agree with that.
That being said, I'm still going to give him 1. I still like the character.
I wasn't not going to give him 1.
No.
Yeah, I'll give him 1.
Me as well.
So supporting
all ones
characters
is
Veronica.
Me. This story, I think, lacked supporting characters.
Yeah.
There's not enough time for them.
Right. There's no build on the characters that you meet at McDonald's. They're very brief.
They're just window dressing, essentially.
Right. So they're just the
extras.
Ones that, they interact with them as a result of this adventure that they go on together.
Sure.
But do you really meet them aside from, or understand them aside from saying, take the money before you take the food because it's going to be easier on me in the end of the day? I mean, I could take that into consideration, but it's not enough for them to really be...
It's a throwaway kind of thing.
Right. There's nothing in the story, and please let me know if any of you disagree, that would lead me to believe that any other character that they come into contact with would be considered a supporting character.
Hunger. But, like, okay. Not really. The thing is, it's not... The point of the story is not that. Like, it's just about these two people.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's almost no need for it. Again, any other character that may exist is just in service to their story.
Right.
And not for anything else.
Right.
I think that's pretty accurate. Like, for me, it's a default 0 because there aren't really any
they don't
characters.
exist.
Right.
Yeah.
0
Yeah.
for me.
All right. So you're going to
It's
go
not a
0s
fault of
across
the
the
Because
story.
board.
the only,
It's
it's not
the
really
only character I can think of would be the guy at McDonald's for that same reason, but that's only to illustrate that she's so bullheaded in her quest to complete her quest.
The sleeping couple at McDonald's.
They're even best now. the boat,
Yeah.
I guess.
The teenagers
the
passed
volcano.
out on their
Yeah.
milkshakes, drunk off their milkshakes.
Okay, and Steve-O, it's on to you.
It's going to bring me to dialogue, which I think was good in this story. I think that it was very specific and very,
It was like to the point, I guess.
I don't know, like, yeah.
But not simple, I guess I want to say.
Right. There were levels to the dialogue that were had in this story, but it wasn't, I mean, as all of Murakami stuff, it wasn't like overly dramatic. It, you know,
at no point was it stilted or cringeworthy.
No, of course not. Like, or not, of course not. Obviously, we should say yes. No, it was not.
Usually, it is to me, but not in his stories. Is all I'm saying.
What he's really good at is creating dialogue that's very to the point. You know, sparse, but also contains layers and like contains different meanings. You know, if you look at it different ways.
There's also the thing about having a line of dialogue and then having a description instead of the response to the dialogue. Mm-hmm. So I want to give an example of this where it's my wife explained, "We're sorry, really, but there weren't any bakeries open. If there had been, we would have attacked a bakery." And that seemed to satisfy them. At least they didn't ask any more questions.
Yeah.
So,
so there's no need for any more dialogue.
Yeah, the style is entwined with the dialogue, and I don't think you can really talk about one without talking about the other.
I agree with that. So that's why I'm waiting to speak on since I do get to talk about style. So.
I think that's the case. Maybe we should talk about style and combine and say what both of our scores are at the end of that. Then
sure.
I think that's right because I think dialogue is such a huge part of Murakami's style. So
I will agree.
Let's do that.
Speaking of style, then I shall start. No, like I think it's probably the easiest one to give to the story. And again, yes, as I admit my bias, but he's a great storyteller, and this is also a translation, so we'll give credit on that. Mm-hmm. And it's an excellent translation. Every translation I've actually read of his, whoever was doing it did a great job, and you get the sense again of the dreamlike, the surreality, but also the realism of it all in some sense, like the passage you just read and some of the other things we mentioned earlier. Yeah, you're right, E. It's completely entwined that dialogue equals style and sort of vice versa when there is dialogue. And the example you just read, replacing dialogue with description, so he doesn't have to even use it. There's no need for it. And that description is all that is needed to be said about whatever is happening. So it's all that to say that I think I'm going to give it both of them a 1 because you can't untangle them from the other, and he weaves it so excellently throughout that it always works.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Definitely 1 for both. For the flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poetic flow. I had written down that
Poetic
earlier.
flow.
It is.
And I always appreciate that.
He does do a really good job of melding his dialogue into the style of his. You know, it seems to just like melt into the rest of the story. Yeah. Like whenever
like
somebody's
a dream,
saying something,
would you say?
Exactly. Well, that's the whole thing, and like everything that I've read by him does the same thing. You know, it just kind of one thing just leads into another, and you don't like they're perfect transitions, but you don't really understand them. Maybe a lot of times,
or maybe you reread a sentence or two, to get more out of it.
And he's really good at doing that, and just kind of leaving you feel like you have the barest grasp of what's going on, but also at the same time you kind of know where you are, where you stand in the story.
So it's 1s all around for both of those?
Double 1s, I think.
1s all around.
I think so.
And recommendation now? Well, I suggested the story for the podcast, so it has already given my recommendation. Mm-hmm. So I definitely recommend.
And still does.
What?
Yes.
Katie?
Yeah, I think I would. I think it was interesting. I talked to her while I was reading it. I said I wasn't really sure. I wasn't done with it yet, but I wasn't really sure where it was going. So I always like a good cliffhanger.
And again, going back into the introduction, great attention grabber. The body, strong, stays with the style, very fluid, very dreamlike state, which I can appreciate from what I've heard about this author. Even with my apprehension of the conclusion where we decided it ended up in, I'm still going to give it a 1 because I would read this again just to see what I've missed, and then I think I would follow it up by another read to see what other levels did I or could I possibly get from. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, a story, short story or novel, what have you, if it keeps me wanting to go back and kind of see, what am I missing? Is there something else that's going on? Is there possibly, and it goes back to that dream state. Do you clearly remember that dream? Are you understanding it exactly? And maybe there's another interpretation to it. And I think he's phenomenal at it. So while I didn't like all of it, I will absolutely recommend it because, again, it's just an attention grabber.
Yeah, you stole a number of my points, but I agree with almost all of them. That if something makes you want to reread it almost immediately and see like, oh, what did I miss? Comb it over a bit and enjoy it still on its face value as well again.
Sure.
I mean, that's a sign of a great story. And like I said, I do have a predilection for him. I would say to anybody, yeah, read some Murakami. And if this is the one you want to start on, yeah, it's a good one. And I think I said to you guys at pre-podcast that I believe I remember reading this story many, many years ago. And as I started to read like halfway through, I'm like, yeah, no, I remember it. I had forgotten about it completely. And then I realized that I had. And it's like as Veronica just said, even though I remembered I read it, it was enough to get more out of it than I would have had I not.
Originally, right?
Yeah. I think that if you like a good literary story, something that it's not necessarily like a genre tale or anything like that, but Murakami does a really good job of just telling us very strange story and kind of pulling you into it. You don't even realize that it's happening at first, and then
I think that's one of his major strengths.
You're just into it, and you know, if you're reading a book of his, you get through like 50, 60 pages before you say, holy hell, I've been reading this for an hour and a half or whatever, or 2 hours, and you kind of don't. It goes by in the blink of an eye.
Sure.
So I would definitely recommend anybody to read this or any of his works. I think that he's a great storyteller.
Well, I'm recommending you to read the scores now.
I will read the scores now. Our highest scores today, Ian, strangely enough, you tied for highest score with Katie. You guys both gave it a 9. Veronica and Scott both gave it an 8. And this may be the first time that this has ever happened. I gave this the lowest score.
Bullshit move.
As a 7.
It was a retaliation for the story you were
He's bitter about another episode.
Let's not talk about that one.
Lots of laughs.
But go on.
You can't think.
That gives us an aggregate score of an 8.2.
Which blasphemy.
Which I think is pretty good. And
no, it's damn solid. It's not the best Murakami, but it's a good intro, even if you want to like.
Sure.
Hey, the thing is, just real quickly as we close off, some of his novels are quite lengthy, so it's kind of a commitment. But if you want to know what his style and what he's all about, read this one.
That's absolutely a good point. I'm Jonathan the Manzer, here with Katie.
Thank you for having me.
Veronica.
Have a good evening.
Steve.
Good night.
And Scott.
I'm going to go rob a McDonald's right now.
Big Macs all around.
Lots to do about nothing. Lots to do about nothing. Music and editing by Chris Morgan.
Lots to do about nothing.
This has been a Lost Cinemas production. All rights reserved.